Hey YouTube, how's it going? As always, I hope you're having a great week. You know, when I look around at those that don't believe in God, there's usually a couple reasons why. One reason might be that, when it comes to if there's really a God, it would change how someone would have to live their life, right? And that person might not like the idea of changing how they live their life. They might not like the idea of something they're doing is wrong, they shouldn't be doing, or they should be doing something else, right? In other words, they don't like the consequences of there being a God, and so they reject him, okay? The other possibility might be that they hear that God is love and all-powerful and he's holy and righteous, but then they see suffering in the world, and they have a complaint against God that if he's all-powerful, why does he allow suffering, right? In other words, they consider what he's doing immoral, right? And they don't want nothing to do with him. And I've dealt with that on different videos, but the other complaint might be that, God is just what there was before science, right? He was the explanation for this world before we had science. In other words, science is disproving God. And that's the one I want to address, right? So I got this one question. If that's you, right? If you believe that God don't exist and that science is disproving him, and that's why you're not going to believe in God, because you're not going to believe in some kind of, fairy tale, right? Something that's not real. That your knowledge is beyond that, right? Then I ask you this one question. Why is there life in the universe? And that's what we're going to call this video. It's going to be called Why Life, okay? Now, I don't know everything about, the Big Bang and evolution and everything else. But I got to ask you this. If life is so fragile, then why does it fly in the face of how we view how the universe works? In other words, if it's so fragile, right, then why does it exist? If only the strong survive, why is there life? And I'm not just talking about human life, but animal life, plant life, even the smallest of lives. A little cell or something is moving. Why? Why is it there? What purpose does it have? How is it that it didn't get wiped out by some inanimate object, a piece of dirt, or something else that's more resilient in this universe, right? Why is it that life is possible? And you might say, well, there's so many different places, it just happened to pop up. Okay? Well, I want to go through why you might look in the Bible and think that science has disproven God, right? Because I don't think this is the case. Okay? And when I look at, the Bible and why people might think that God has been disproven, usually you're going to go to, first of all, the creation story. And you might see the time frame that it took for creation. Okay? You might say, oh, that disproves God. Or you might look and say, okay, God always was, you're saying. He has no beginning. He was not created. He just always was. How can I believe that? That doesn't even make sense. Okay? Or the third thing is, how did he do it? How is it that, God creating stuff matches up to reality better than evolution or the Big Bang, right? How is that? Well, let's start with the time, right? I really struggled with this one. I didn't really want to add it in. But every time I looked at it, I said, man, it's just impossible to not say something about it, right? And I'm sure there's going to be people that are not happy with my response, okay? On every end of the spectrum, they're not going to be happy with it, okay? Because when you look at the creation story, it talks about days. It talks about these 6 days. And you have some that would say that, and most Christians, right, that God created the world in 6 earth days, right? It took 6 days and that's it. So the world's like, 6,000 years old in 6 days or something. And then you might have some Christians that look at the Bible and they say, well, later in the Bible it talks about, in 2 Peter 3:18, it says, one day is as 1,000 years to God, and 1,000 years is one day. So one day could mean 1,000 years. So really, the world might be like, 13,000 years old. The universe might be 13,000 years old. And then you have another group that looks at the 6 days as more of a design order. In other words, however much time the first day was, that's what he created first. And then after that, he created this next thing. And so on and so forth through the 6 days. It was just an order to creation and not necessarily a time frame. Okay? And like I said, I struggled with this. I said, I prayed and I said, Lord, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to say something that's wrong. I don't want to tell people, hey, it was 6 days and it was really 6,000. I don't want to tell people it was 6,000 and it was really millions of years. I don't want to tell people it was millions of years and it was really 6 days. See, to me, the time frame ain't really the most important thing. For me, it doesn't matter that much. But I know for some, it matters a lot. Right? It's the one thing that they snap and say, this disproves God. I'll give you an example why it doesn't matter to me, though, quick, before I go into what I think and what God laid upon my heart about this and what God gave me that made me say, okay, I'm going to add this in. And it's going to be in there no matter what. Because this one thing, I almost didn't even make this video because of this. But I have to, right? And so the reason the time frame of it doesn't really matter to me is if I went and bought a house, right? If you went and bought a house, it's a complete house, it's awesome, it's perfect, it's everything you ever wanted. And the realtor said, hey, it took them 6 days to make this house. And you say, okay, cool. Or the realtor told you, hey, it took 6 years to make this house. Or he said, it took 600 years to make this house. What difference is it going to make to you on if you like the house or not? It's going to be what is existing right then, right? And you see, to me, it ain't the most important thing. How long it took. Because it'd be pretty amazing if it took 6 days, just as it'd be pretty amazing if it took 600 years. Or even 6 years, right? And so that's why, to me, we could focus on that, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is not how long, but who. You see what I'm saying? And what God laid upon me, and I'll give it to you like this, right? In Luke 10:18, I prayed quite a bit. And it's almost like God just spoke and said these words to me. It reminded me of this verse. In Luke 10:18 it says, and he said to them, and this is Jesus speaking, and he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And you might say, what difference does it make about Satan? Okay? But here's the question. If you believe it's 6 days, or whatever you believe, right? Because that's probably the harder pushback I might get on this, right? If you believe it's 6 days, when did Satan fall? Better yet, when was Satan created? When were the angels created? See, I don't know if it was 6 days or 6,000 years or 6 billion years. I don't know. But I believe this one thing, that the God I believe in is all powerful. He can do anything. That if he wanted to, he could have snapped his fingers and everything could have existed just the way it is. But I believe when we look at the creation story, we don't have everything that we'd want to know about it, right? It doesn't tell us everything about creation. It doesn't tell us when the angels were created. In fact, you go and you look at it and it says, it talks about the days at Earth Day, right? But the sun and the moon, which distinguish when the days are, or how long a day is, wasn't created till the 4th day. And you could say, well, I'm wrong on that, whatever. My point is, I don't think it's the most important thing to God. I think his whole point in telling us about creation was to tell us how much it meant to us, or meant to him, when he created us. See, he could have snapped his fingers and we were created. But that would be kind of like an artist walking up to a machine, hitting a button, a picture pops out and says, hey, look at my creation. How much would he care about it? No, I think the fact that he took his time proves how much he cares for us. Just like an artist who walks up to a canvas and starts designing shapes on the canvas and continues all the way until he sees on this canvas exactly what he pictures in his mind. See, God took his time because he cared about us. I don't care if it's 6 days, Earth days. If it's 6,000 years, one day is as 1,000 years to God. Or if it's a order to creation and it took him longer. The important thing to me is that he is the one that created us. Now, the second thing that we usually come and have problems with if we don't believe in God is that God has no beginning. And you say, how can that be? How can that be? Well, I'll put it to you this way. In Ecclesiastes 3:11, he says, and I'm going to read the NIV version because I think it gets to the point a little bit better. It says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. In other words, we can't understand a God that always was because we were created. We have a beginning. We weren't like him. We weren't always here. Right? But even then, no matter what you believe in something that is eternal, that always was. Think about it. If you look at the Big Bang, what's your biggest question about it? Where did the particles come from that created the Big Bang? Where did they come from? Something always has to have been here. No matter what. It has to always have been here. It has to be eternal. The difference is you might believe in some particles were always here and created life. Or led to life, led to what we see today. Or you can believe that a being, an all-powerful being, an all-knowing being was eternal and created everything you see. So I think it makes more sense an all-powerful, all-knowing being being the thing that's eternal than an inanimate object. And I'll tell you, it's because of this. It's because of design and purpose, which leads us to how. We say that, science disproves God. But does it really? How does it disprove God? Because you don't think that it matches up to what the Bible says? Let me tell you something. There was religious leaders in Jesus' day that missed him because they thought that he was going to come and conquer the Roman Empire and put the Jews in a place of authority over the entire world. But they were wrong. They misunderstood the Bible. They misunderstood God's word, in other words. Do I think it's very possible that we can misunderstand God's word? Yes. Does it make him wrong? No. Does science disprove God? Let me ask you this. When you go to do a scientific test or if you want to do an experiment, what do you have to do? You have to design the experiment for a purpose, correct? That follows with everything we see in reality, everything we see in our life. We have to do stuff by design and for a purpose. And we could say, I just did this randomly. But you know what? You designed it to be something that's very random to you, but for a purpose. No matter how you get around it, it still comes back to design and purpose. The universe screams out design and purpose. You don't believe me? Look at the scientific laws. Look at natural laws, right? They just scream out design and purpose because they're there, right? They set boundaries. If everything's random, why do we have something that's so precise and exact? Why is it not random throughout the universe? Why do we not get different results? It's because we were designed for a purpose. I'll give you an example. One last example why, when it comes down to it, is why science doesn't disprove God. And I've heard it from many speakers, and I might use it a little bit different, but it says the same point. Let's say you and me, we walk into a friend's house. You're a scientist. We walk into a friend's house, and we walk into the kitchen. It's a mutual friend, and there's a pot of water boiling on the stove. And I say to you, why is that pot of water boiling on the stove? And you give me scientific fact about, what's going on that makes that pot of water boil, right? Is that right? I would say it is. That's why the water's boiling, correct? Yes. And then a friend walks in. And I say to him, why is that pot of water boiling on the stove? And he says, well, I just wanted to make a bag of top ramen for lunch. You see, does his answer disprove why the water's boiling? And does the scientific answer disprove why the water's boiling? They don't. They just complement each other. See, science just tells us how something works, not why. It doesn't prove the why. Why is there life? Science can't prove that, but God can. In Colossians 1:16 it says, for by him all things were created that are in the heaven and that are on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created through him and for him. There's your why right there. Science can only say how something happens. In fact, many times we take scientific theory, which is not a fact, and call it a fact. I'll give you an example, okay? When mankind was trying to fly like the birds, there was many scientists that said, okay, well, I have this theory that if I put on these wings that look like bird wings and I flap my arms really fast, I'll take off in flight. And it didn't work. And so they said, maybe I'm just not flapping them quick enough. So they designed a machine to do it quicker. And it shook and shook and shook. Right? And then were scientific theories that were disproven, correct? I mean, technically, it ain't wrong, but there's something missing. It doesn't really work that way. The way that we fly is that we have this wing that's designed to where air travels slow over one surface and faster over the other, so we have high pressure and low pressure, and one tries to get to the other, right? And it provides lift, okay? And that was a scientific idea that was proven. See, there's ideas, there are theories that aren't proven. That's why they're theories. Just because it's scientific theory doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's right. When it comes to, why the universe is here, or how it's here, or how it happened, pretty much a lot of that stuff is theory because we cannot prove it. And God didn't really tell us exactly how. But it doesn't negate the fact that He is the one that designed us. That He created us for a purpose. That it was by His will, by His guiding hand, by His creation, by His speaking us into existence. How? He didn't tell me how. Right? He didn't give me the scientific answer. He just told me the answer I needed, that He did it. Right? So what does that leave you with? Where does that leave you? If you're standing here today and you're saying, man, you're right. Everything in life screams that there's a design and a designer. There has to be a God, right? But why your God? When I say there's many gods, but most of them were somehow created, right? Like the Greek gods were created from a primordial ooze. It leaves you the same answer. Why life, right? It doesn't answer it. See, only a God that's eternal could answer that question, right? With reality. And if God spent the time He did on you and me to create us, why would he just walk away? He obviously didn't, right? See, we failed. We fell short of what we were created for and how we were created. So unlike these other gods that we learn about, he came into our reality to redeem us, to save us, to bring it back to him because he cared that much about us. He came and died on the cross for us because he loved us. John 3:16 says this. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." And verse 17 says, "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." He loved you so much, he sent his Son to pay the ransom for you, to pay the price that was owed, because God is a just God and justice had to be served. And there was only one that could pay that price, and that was his own Son. But he didn't send him into the world to get rid of us, but to redeem us, to bring us back to him. See, God is the only answer that follows with reality. The reality of the fact that we are here by design and by a purpose. And that the one that designed us cares about us and loves us. That even when we fell short, he chose to redeem us. He chose to know us, to have a relationship with us, because we were created for him. Not because he needed us, but because he wanted us, because he loved us. That's the question you have to answer yourself, though. Are you going to accept that? You might look at it and say, "Oh, that's definitely right." But are you going to accept him? You got to answer that question. I can't do it for you. But if you answer it and you do, then seek him and you will find him. Find his word. Read his word. Seek after him and find him. I want you to have a great week. And I hope you do. I hope you found a purpose that you were created for. A purpose in your life, a purpose for your life. Have a great week.